Hello, welcome to this presentation of Modern Sales Techniques, Tools, and CRM. This is a recording of an executive briefing webinar originally recorded April the 16th, 2016, and it's presented in conjunction between Sandler Training and CRM Systems Group. The presenters for today's recording are Robert Nickel. He's a business strategist, entrepreneurial expert, and a retired chartered accountant. He's at CRM Systems. His email address appears on the screen right there, and he can be found at www.crmsystems.com. And the second presenter is Tony Colito. He's a growth, communication, and management expert at Sandler Training. His email address is also found on the screen, and he can be found also at sandler.com. Our discussion today is regarding best practices, sales processes, and how to manage sales through the effective use of CRM. So let's let Rob and Tony get right into the content. Tony?
What's really important is a lot of times people don't realize you really need to have a system and process for managing, one, your sales process, but two, also for managing your sales people. So, systems and processes are very important. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little later on, how they tie in to the tracking systems and the CRM system. So basically what we're going to try to do today is we're going to try to discuss some of the common issues that come up in sales. And usually when there's a sales issue, process issue, there's a corresponding tracking issue on the other side or marketing issue on the other side, right? So what we're going to do is talk about 5 or 6 questions that come up on a regular basis and try to give you some answers and some strategies. And Rob's going to tie it into how we track all the information, how we can use, the tools for marketing and tracking. So I turn it over to you.
We talk to a lot of companies over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year. And as we go and interact with leaders of business, small, mid-size business, some large ones as well, we get to hear about different concerns. And, a company might be in distribution, in manufacturing, retailing, you have it, professional services. The challenges are amazingly common.
Yeah, a lot of times what comes up in a discussion is really has to do with prospecting, right? Either your guys are not doing prospecting, or if they are doing prospecting, well, they're not getting in front of enough prospects, and when they do get in front of prospects, well, how do you figure out if they're getting results? Now, what we usually do by default is we go into how many people have you met, how many conversations have you had, how many follow-ups have you done, and, how many have we sold. I mean, that's great for the basics, but if you're going to plan long-term, you need to have something a little bit more structured. You have something that's a little bit more effective that will allow you to, set your objectives up front and identify the steps that need to be taken by you and, of course, by whatever backup system you're using. But the biggest problem, from my perspective, is that a lot of people, they're not really prospecting. We get caught in this loop these days where you see a lot of the stuff, you even see it online and on LinkedIn. Cold calling is dead, right? And if you notice, the people that are promoting cold calling is dead are the people selling marketing programs, right? So it's great to sell marketing programs and pay-per-click, but at the end of the day, you still got to speak to a human being, right? You still got to approach somebody, or somebody's got to approach you, right? And so let's face it, nobody likes to do cold calls. Well, yeah, there is one. There's a sales manager, because he doesn't make any cold calls, really, so he likes to do cold calls, right? Or at least he tells the sales guys they have to do cold calls. So cold calling, prospecting, and getting in front of people is partly strategic, partly mindset, right? It's conceptual. A lot of times, the reservations come from the fact that the guy doesn't have a strong self-confidence, not enough self-confidence, doesn't really have a system he can rely on, is not being coached, mentored, or trained internally by his manager. Right? So these are some of the stuff that we come across every day. And when they do some activities, then somebody's got to be able to measure that effectiveness. And Rob was telling me that there are air tools right now. Well, maybe you should train about the pipeline, whatever you call it, the funnels and stuff in your programs that would allow people to control more what their activities are and measure their effectiveness.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Tony. It's surprising how large companies get, and yet if they come to you and the executive comes to you and says, by the time I get my sales report and I get any funnel, it's so out of date. It doesn't really matter to me. And a lot of companies are running off of Excel spreadsheets, and there's multiple versions around, and information's just not timely. The other challenge that they have is they just don't know who's doing well and who's not, and where their results are coming from. For some companies, 2008 real estate shut down. There was a Windows manufacturer out in the part of the world that we're in, and just didn't see it coming, and created huge challenges for them as well. And so how do you capture that information? You know, where's your funnel at? What's working for us? What's not working for us? And it can't just be intuitive in people's heads. It's diligence, it's discipline, it's process that work for people in selling to it or not. And so as companies get in and they implement work tools that support these selling processes, we do that with our Sage CRM, and you get to measure, well, how many calls were made, what were the results, where are we getting results from, and we get to support the process and see what works and what doesn't work.
Right, and what's interesting is that we found that statistically, you know, it's hard enough to get our sales guys or ourselves in front of prospects. 80% of salespeople don't do follow-up. Now, don't do follow-up because maybe they're a little disorganized. That could be. But a lot of times they don't have the tools really to structure their follow-ups. You know, they use Outlook or something, and it's great if you're talking to 2, 3 people, but if you're talking to 30, 40 people, that might be a little bit, you know, you need something a little more sophisticated, something that's going to prod you to take some kind of action today, tomorrow, and the next day. So technology has to marry in with the will to make the calls, the will to do the follow-ups, and you still need the technology to help you make sure that you deliver the message, right? And that's where I think your tools can be very effective. Issue, though, is that I think a lot of managers not only don't train their salespeople, don't know how to use their tools. This is, you know, and we go out there and we try to teach the salespeople, whether it's your product or mine, and the issue a lot of the times is the manager, the people, or I like to call the quarterback, right? And he's not calling the plays, and that's where the issue is. So we got to start from the top down. I don't know, experience, you know, people in the audience have heard, but that's usually what happens, right? You can't blame it on the sales guy if he's not being managed, right?
That's so interesting, Tony, because when we start an implementation, even before we take the engagement, we're making certain that there's executive buy-in, starting off with the CEO, the VPs, and they need to be the greatest champions, and they get what they value. And there's such huge empowerment for them, but you need that leadership buy-in. Your point's completely on the mark for what we do as well. Yeah, and as you do that, and as you get leadership buying in, and you implement the tools, all of a sudden you can define that process. We love using the simple workflow capability that we've got, which is actually industry leading. But now we can define the selling process. And so after having a qualifying phone call with someone, we can start drip marketing. And after 3 emails, it can set up a task, and that task is a follow-up phone call. And we can define the whole selling process that way, and go ahead and support it, manage it. And of course, for the executive team, we've got this little eye in the sky that will go and monitor the process as well, and provide a dashboard and show the results, and how's Peter doing, how's Mary doing on their sales efforts. And if something's falling between the cracks, the team can jump in to help out.
I'm glad you brought that up, because once you have the tools, once you have management that's engaged, the other issue, though, stems from the fact that the people still need skills. They still need to know what kind of questions you ask. They still need to know what kind of process you're going to follow. They still need to know, what am I going to do in presentation mode, right? And a lot of times, and I've seen this over and over again almost every day, you go into an organization, and they're doing all right. I mean, they wouldn't be around if they, you know, they wouldn't have survived all this time if they weren't doing something right. The problem is, you ask, you know, the people in charge, you know, how do you keep track of your people, or what process do they follow? And they don't know, right? Paul has got one system he's following. John has got another system, Mary's got another system. So how can you coach, mentor, and train from the inside these people if they're all using a different process? And when do you, go from, excuse the expression, you walk in, you ask 3 questions, then you show up and throw up all your features and benefits, right? Hoping something will stick, and the prospect will figure, oh my God, that applies to me, and maybe motivate them to buy something. I mean, that's the approach they're using, right? Something that dates back to 60s or 70s. I mean, we're not using typewriters anymore. We should really not be using these type of strategies and techniques. We've got to come into the 21st century. I mean, that's been my experience. I've only been doing this for 30 years, so.
Yeah, you and I have a little bit of experience under our belt, and we've really watched all sorts of skills and tools come along to empower and enable us and help us achieve better results in today's world, competitive marketplace. We need them. We really need them to survive. So, yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about some new approaches. I mean, let's discuss a little bit of situation selling, new approaches. Where do we go from here? What do we do to get better results? A lot of the problems that you see on these slides, whether it's getting lower margins or not getting enough sales, not getting enough prospect, has to do with the fact that nobody's in charge. You have to have a system that basically allows the buyer to buy from you. You can't sell somebody who's not ready to buy. It's as simple as that. The job of the salesperson is to help identify the needs of the prospect and then to tailor a solution based on those needs. Most salespeople don't have this approach. Most salespeople will ask 2-3 questions to figure, okay, that makes sense, he's qualified, and then make some kind of presentation. And then the guy's going to say, okay, give me a quote, and then they give him a quote, chasing, and sometimes they end up closing the deal, maybe 5 or 10% of the time. Most of the time they don't. The object of selling is twofold. One is you need 2 things to sell correctly. One is guts and the other one is control. The guts to ask the questions that we're going to give you the information that's going to allow you to tailor a solution made for that particular prospect. And 2, control of the conversation from the get-go so you can get the information required to identify the needs so that you can actually make that presentation further along in your process. Most companies, most salespeople don't use that approach, right? Before I want to make a presentation to anybody, I want to know, what is the person's needs, wants, desires. Let's call them pain, right? How much is he willing and able to invest, right? What is his time, money, and resource situation to solve that problem? And how do they make decisions? And as we move up the corporate ladder and we get larger and larger companies, the buying process becomes a lot more strategic, right? You may be selling to a user buyer who brings you to procurement or to the buyer, and then from the buyer you may have to go to a committee. So the sales process is getting more and more complicated. You don't have the skills to ask the right questions. You don't have the skills to anticipate where this is going before you get there, right? How can you make a presentation that makes any sense, right? So you got to be able to identify who the players are, how do you deal with those players, how the decisions are made, what kind of budget is available, what their pain is, and then, and only then, usually second or third meeting, then you want to make a presentation that makes sense. Now that presentation becomes proof of concept, becomes a confirmation of the discussions you've had in the previous meeting and no longer a sales pitch, right? And a lot of times I get people telling me, well, we do a lot of budgetary quotes. All budgetary quotes means is that you give somebody a price that you'll never be able to increase, right? Because most people go in and give a budgetary quote and they usually lowball it, figuring I'm going to attract, the guy is going to be really happy with my price, and then you try to negotiate that up. Very rare I see that going up, right? It's because they have no control of the sales process, right? You got to give the prospect the ability to walk away as soon as possible, go for the no. Our objective as salespeople is not to qualify people, is to disqualify people as quickly as possible. So I can identify the ones that are qualified. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Thanks, Tony. So much truth to it. But, one of the things that we find many companies are in this place where they're providing a service or they're providing a product, and it's a competitive world out there. And so they don't have a patent-protected, unique offering. And so the question now is, how do they differentiate their offering? How do they make it anything other than the whole price cutting, try to seduce them kind of a process? And
It's
recently
really about.
I was having a meeting with a company, whatever, 30, 40, $50 million revenue business, again, in a very competitive marketplace, both large and small competition, local and international. And the CEO was talking about something he was really proud of, and it was a differentiator. And he'd worked for years to get the business. But here was this differentiator. This was a manufacturing concern. And the differentiator was that his Fortune 500 customer reseller was getting a dashboard. And that dashboard for the customer meant they knew where every order was in the process. Had it gone into production? Was it on schedule? Was it being delivered on time? Was anything running afoul and being late? And in meetings with his reseller, his customer, they just loved it because he's one vendor where they could sleep at night. They didn't have to worry about, the train coming off the rails. And so a differentiating capability for them was interorganizational communications, interorganizational workflows, transparency of information. And that was a huge value add and differentiator that allowed him to do business with this major company. And so those are the capabilities we work with companies to develop. And so how do you use data? How do you use process? How do you use collaborative and integrated communications and integrated processes as a value add, as an integral part of your offering? So many companies, they're making decisions blind. The CEO, the executives cannot find the underlying data to make a decision. And I wonder how many people on this presentation, on this briefing today, can relate to that. They know exactly what they'd like to have. And yet nobody can pull that information together for them in any reasonable, timely basis. And now it's gut feel and instinct. There's a whole different mindset. It's the diligent people that win, and they'll be wealthy, and the slack will be poor. And so how do you re-engineer your business? How do you have the whole team valuing the rigor with which to assemble the data and then be able to evaluate it, to identify new opportunities, to create new value equations, to protect your margins and give you competitive differentiation so that you can win? That's where Tony and Sandler and High CRM systems are focused, and you can pick up speed and go. So tracking performance data and analyzing is so key, whether it's for the individual salesperson's performance or corporate-wide. How are we going to strategically differentiate ourselves, and how can we make the next quarter better than the last?
No, it's interesting you bring up those topics, because what you're talking about, that intelligence, that information is crucial. And if you look at the other side of that coin, which is the sales process, a lot of times people end up competing on price because they don't have enough information about their client or their prospect. They don't have enough information about their competitors. They don't really know what's important to their prospect. They haven't really done their homework, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is they try to manipulate, the buyer into buying something they don't need. Buy it today because the price is going up on Monday, that kind of stuff. A real great bonding move, that is, right? Or they spend a lot of time, with people who really have no value, and they have not been able to identify what really is, what is a prospect that's valuable. And that's because they're not prepared. And they're not prepared because they don't know enough about their business, don't have enough knowledge about their products and services. See, the whole trick about selling is very simple. You have to know all your products and services. The only thing that we tell you at Sandler is you can't tell anybody until you do the presentation. I know how that sounds crazy, but if I have enough knowledge about my product and services, what we call features and benefits, then I can formulate questions that makes sense so I can identify the need that fit my features and benefits. And then and only then, I'm going to present a solution that makes sense. And that's what a true selling system is all about. Step one. Step two, well, actually that's step two, after management is already in. Step three is your service people need to be cued in to what the sales people are doing. Because where most companies, and especially manufacturers, you were talking about before about manufacturers, and I deal with a lot of manufacturers, where most manufacturers get shopped around, they get shopped around from their service department. Because they're going to call up the service department of ABC company and say, hi, my name is Tony Carlito. I got an account at your company, account number 123. Can you give me a price on X part or B part? Right? And the person will go in there and say, oh, he's a client, and they'll give him a price. They'll never question why he wants that price. They'll never, dig a little deeper to see if there's a pain in there or if what's the real reason the person's asking you for a price. They never check it out. So therefore, there's never a tie-in between the service and the sales. Next thing you know, the sales guy gets a call and says, you know what, we've decided that we want a better price on X part because they just went to shop you around, right? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes they even do it with the sales guy in the room. So, and that's because the company, we got to be sales oriented. We got to all be thinking about the same page. We all got to be on the same page. Your management, sales management, as well as executive management, your salespeople, and your service people. Then and only then you increase efficiencies. Then your service department becomes the part of the business that increases the loyalty and maintains the client retention. Now, that part of the business becomes relationship selling. Because before that, till you've got a client, you've got no relationship, right? And we call it conversational selling, but to go from conversation to relationship, you have to have a client and have a relationship with. Or you're going to have to wait till you get one before you sell them. That could be a very long day. Go to the bank and tell them I got a whole bunch of relationships I'm working on. See what your manager tells you. That's really good, Tony. Where's my check? Right? That's what it's all about. It's about money. It's about profitability. It's about giving good service. It's about giving good support. And it's being able to track your information and be able to do it consistently. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
It's really interesting, and the whole point that you bring up is the customer experience domain. And the walls, it's like we've got the Great Berlin Wall between sales and service. And we're recently sitting down and talking to a company that's selling $200,000 products, and they do the whole sale, and then this proud new owner comes into the service department, and he's just put down almost $250,000, and yet the service department hasn't got a clue, doesn't know who he is from Adam, doesn't know what he bought, why he bought, what his business is, anything like that. And as you look at your business, you need to figure out a way to have interdepartmental coordination. How do you go from the marketing effort that starts identifying leads and qualifying prospects, and how does it gather information about who your target market is? I mean, there are sources from LinkedIn and other sources that are out there where you can get a lot of background information and profile. And it's work to collect all of that. Now the sales team needs a handoff from marketing once you get it and somebody qualifies themselves. And so where do you put that information? And then sales goes through, and if they do their job in the Sandler way, and go in and qualify and get the information, probe for the pain, truly understand the customer's need, and then build a solution to satisfy that customer and build the value in the customer's eyes. There's another huge layer of information that's gathered. The customer is successfully sold. Okay, now it's service and delivery. And so how does service know the reason for it, the value, the role that your corporation is to play on that deal, on servicing that customer? And so it's all about building customer experience. So what you need is you need one information repository, enter once, available to everybody. Two, you need interdepartmental processes. You need handoffs. And so when it's going from marketing to sales, what's the process for that? When it's going from sales to customer service, or before customer service even to production and delivery, whether it's production of a service or a manufactured good, and delivery. How is the information handed off? How do you know that you're meeting expectations? How do you reduce errors in this whole process? And finally, the customer service department. So what's your corporate commitment? What's your value add in the whole equation? And so there are two elements, and that's why Sandler and CRM Systems, we've just joined forces for a series of executive briefing webinars, because part of it is just the skills, the knowledge, the training. And you take a look at the top golf pros, and they're playing, but they always go back to practicing the basics. They always go back to strengthening their skills and refocusing themselves, and just working diligently at improving themselves. We need to do that in sales and in customer service. The other piece is, where's that repository of information? Where are the workflow processes? It's almost like, your brain, your memory, and your whole spinal cord to communicate. And it's so critical. And so what you want is that central repository. You want to have something that's completely integrated, where you enter data information once and it's available to whom, at the place and the time that they need it. So that can mean mobile, and also in a format that's creating contextual information, so that people are being able to assimilate that information and use it at the right time in the right place. And then you want your teams of people empowered to be creating the best practice workflow processes for any activity. If you go into a team of 5 or 8 people and you ask them what a process is, if there are 5 people, you've probably got at least 4 different stories. When you start to have them collaborate, and there's a vehicle to define a workflow, they may not get it right the first time, but they'll really be motivated to improving it. And now all of a sudden, your organization can get speed. You've got the sharing of information that can build trust, and you create empowerment. Huge benefits. People get supercharged. You get your best people staying instead of leaving. The spin-off benefits are just huge.
It's interesting you said that, because a lot of times I go into companies and we start talking and they want to put together a sales program, which we do. And then I say, okay, so now how are you going to track all this? How are you going to do the follow-ups? How are you going to get all this information? And you'd be surprised how many companies, 10, 50, 20, $30 million companies, they're not huge, they're still using an Excel spreadsheet. Give me a break, right? And then they say, well, we're trying to keep our guys accountable, but you're asking your guys to fill in some Excel spreadsheet, right? And we encourage them to put together, get a CRM system, get it implemented into your sales and follow-up system, make sure that the guys use the system, right? Because it's going to help your sales, it's going to help your tracking, it's going to cue you to do certain activities, which, like you said before, if you keep it in your mind, if you forget it, you forgot it. It's the end of the story, right? But once it's documented somewhere, and if it requires you to take some kind of activity, right, whether it's automatic or programmed, because I'm no expert on CRM, you guys are the CRM specialists, but so I know that stuff can be done, so that today I've got a list of people I need to follow up on because this happened, this happened, this happened. There's probably a higher chance that my sales guy is going to do it since it's in front of him right now. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't put the information in, you're going to get the information out. So there still has to be a little bit of hand-holding, but that has to be done with the managers, the people in charge. We have to encourage, coach, mentor, and train their people, whether it's for sales or for tracking or for the CRM systems, but the two have to work together if they want to increase sales, if they want to increase profitability. And a lot of times the only difference between one company and another is because one company is more structured and organized and knows where everything is, and the other one isn't. And it's not because they're more competitive in price. Sometimes they're even less competitive in price, right? It's just, in other words, more expensive. It's just an issue of organization. Clients are looking for efficiency And effectiveness, the nice guy syndrome is gone, right? I'm investing money in your product. What are you going to give me? Can I depend on you? Am I going to get the service? All that has to do with some kind of system and process, whether it's tracking system, whether it's sales system, whether it's management system. That's what business is all about. And we have to start thinking as business people in sales rather than salespeople in business, right? Because most people think of like salespeople in business rather than business people in sales.
Real interesting thoughts there, Tony. And when we're talking about all this, some people are listening, and you might be thinking dollar signs and, oh, we don't have this or that, and it's going to cost us. Cost is the wrong thought. You invest in your business to generate growth, to generate returns. And a lot of companies, if their invested capital is showing whatever, an 8% return or a 12% return, and that's ROI for the investor, it's feeling okay. For an internal rate of return, some companies are targeting 18, 20% ROI, and that's even better. What we've seen when we go into businesses and both the tools, the empowerment, the capabilities are there, like ERP, CRM, having those knowledge repositories, having the best flow work processes, but also the soft side. Somewhere you need to have the expertise and the training to be able to change the way that you're doing things, to be able to take a look at what you've been doing and what's the old saying about keep doing the same thing over and over and again, you expect different results. Who does that?
Right?
And so when you make an investment and you're investing to change the way that you do business, when you bring international caliber expertise to the table to teach your people, to facilitate that process, our experience is that we can see payback on that investment in under 12 months in some cases. We'll talk to our prospects and our clients about a target of 12 to 24% payback, 12 to 24 month payback, pardon me. And so if you go to your executive team and say, we want to improve the performance of our business. We've got an investment proposal for you. And so we're looking at a 50 to 100% ROI. Is that worth considering? Very few companies would say no, right?
Problem with a lot of companies, it's mindset. It's not money. It's mindset. And I'm sure you get the same question. I get it all the time. Well, what if I invest in training this guy and he leaves? My answer is usually, what if you don't and he stays? Right? Then what? Right? You mediocrity. The problem is it's mindset. But the companies, whether it's CRM, whether it's sales process, companies have got to start changing the way that they think of their business and what is required, what is an investment and what is an expense. The minute they start seeing your product in mind as an expense, they're never going to get out of the gutter. They got to see it as an investment that's going to generate returns, either increased sales, increased efficiency, right? Whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of the time that has to do with the people delivering the message to these prospects. A lot of times our competitors are still hard selling, whether they're selling CRM systems or selling training for that matter, right? They're still in the 60s and the 70s. I dealt with a whole bunch of guys here in Montreal that were in the CRM business, and all they were doing was hard selling clients, right? They didn't get it that the boxes, I can buy a box on the internet, whatever it costs, $200-300. That and 79 cents will buy me a coffee at Tim Hortons. I mean, that means absolutely nothing unless I know how to implement them, unless I can speak to somebody that understands, can explain to me how I can use these dashboards, how it's going to benefit my company, how it's going to increase my efficiency. It means nothing. So your own industry and my own industry, the same thing, right? We got people out there that are pretending to represent our products and increase other people's efficiency, and they're doing it from an inefficient perspective. So the question is, how do we differentiate, or how does the client out there, the prospect, differentiate between us and the competition? My answer is simple. We do events like this on a regular basis, to show people what we can do, the information that we have, give them an opportunity to have a conversation one-on-one with us tomorrow, today, next week, it doesn't matter, right? And if there's something we can do for them, we'll tell them. If there's something we can't do, we'll also tell them, right? The objective is to make people aware of what's available, make people aware of what works and what doesn't work. And unless we speak to people, they're never going to know. Because if we depend on our competition, nobody's ever going to move forward.
So true, so true. But 6 years ago, I had my own business, and we invested in Sandler Trading, and we just saw the results. We were selling multi-$1,000 trading package to individual investors for their personal use, and so significant purchase for them. And the results started to change as people got the skills, as people understood how to communicate with people, and just to take them forward through a process. How to listen, really, really significant.
Well, look, I mean, you know, I've been doing this for a very long time, and the other day I was actually working on the numbers of what we did for some companies in the last 5 years. I like to do it every 5 years. And on average, I think we increased sales by about 25% a year, over and above their normal ratio, right? That's just from having the guys being more efficient at selling. And you know what? A lot of times, it wasn't a question they became great super salesmen. They just stopped discounting, right? They actually understood how to have a conversation with somebody and give them a price not based on a discount, and that's what drove the sales forward, right? So it doesn't take much. It takes a little bit of commitment. It takes, you know, I think that a lot of times people don't have commitments, whether it's about sales, whether it's about CRM, whether it's about anything. They're not committed. They're afraid to make a decision. Unfortunately today, you know, you got to be very decisive, you know, and I think that you got to be able to communicate effectively with people. A lot of people don't know how to communicate. They just talk and talk and talk and talk until they turn blue. What I'm starting to do right now, and I should stop. I think we should open up to any questions that the audience may have, and maybe answer a few questions. What do you think?
Absolutely. On your screens, you see a chat box there, and so just go ahead and grab a chat box and submit your questions, please. We've got a question here. First question was, what's changed the most in selling in the past 5 years?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the buyer, from our perspective, I think that the buyers are much more sophisticated than they were 5 years ago. I think that with the access to information, you know, in many cases you're talking to somebody and the guy's on his phone verifying what you're saying. So the days where you could, you know, you could pull the wool over somebody's eyes are far gone. You really need to understand your business. You need to understand your product. Like I said, you need to understand your features and benefits so that you can ask the questions, identify the needs, because information is readily accessible, much more so than before. Right? You got to be a professional, and you got to have a system and a process. And a lot of times people don't have it. Sure, they have their own little system and process, but you got to have something that works, and that works within your corporate culture. As a matter of fact, I equate it to football. You know, everybody plays football, but every team has got its own playbook, right? So, you know, you can have, you know, the same selling system as me, but how I apply it within my corporate culture, my organization, is going to mean whether or not it's successful or not. So, and that means you need to talk to professionals who can evaluate and assess your business and offer maybe some kind of programs that make sense. And I think that we qualify in both ends, at least from a sales perspective.
I was listening to Horst Schulze, president of a leading hotel chain, just a few months ago. And what I believe has changed in the last 5 years is our expectation as customers. In the hotel industry, high-end, a customer, a guest is expecting to be recognized, is expecting that the people in the hotel know their needs and their preferences and their desires. And, you know, whether it's Amazon that we're competing against or Honda or whoever it is, we're expecting that they've got contextual information about who we are as a customer when we're looking for a response. And so when we go to them, we expect them to know. I did that with just a screensaver on my iPads and iPhones the other day. Went back to the company and they're on the website. All my purchases are listed. I don't have to go collecting data. And so So technology has really come along, and how do you in your business now empower your service people, your sales people, your trading people with the customer information so that they can give that personalized service, because that's going to be the difference between winning and losing. Certainly a significant factor. Next question that we have is,
how can you ensure that your customer service and sales are in sync?
mhm.
I think that's an interesting question, and I think, I mean, at the risk of sounding repetitive, besides the system and processes, I think that one of the most important elements within any organization and within a department is you need to be very effective communicators. And a lot of times, people can't communicate effectively, and that means they don't know what makes the other person tick, and how much information is too much information, how many questions are too many questions, how many are not enough. What's an emotional response and what isn't. And it's something that I think is becoming more and more required, at least from our perspective in the industry, because service people are a different animal from salespeople. They're much more subdued. They're much more help-oriented. They're not necessarily money-motivated as much as salespeople are, even though most organizations do offer incentives. So it's a question of communication, and it's a question of leadership. I think that you need to have leadership that knows how to set, rules and regulations and give people responsibilities and hold them accountable, and make sure stuff is done. And when they need help, to help them, coach them to deal with conflict. Because a lot of times, these people have to do it all by themselves. So if you can become more effective communicators, and you've got both service department and sales department working on the same system, chances are you're going to probably be better off and get better results than those companies that don't have. But at least from my perspective, I'm sure there's a lot that you can do with the service and sales department from a CRM perspective.
Yeah, Tony, thank you. Communication is so vital. Weren't you just telling me the other day you went off to see a company and you weren't going to see the VP of sales, and the question is, how can I help you? And their challenge was they had whatever, 10, a dozen project managers, and they recognized that their project managers needed to be able to communicate better. And significant value add, it goes on throughout our organizations, absolutely. And so part of the problem, part of the challenge in addressing this question is leadership. Many people in many companies do not know how what they're doing today, how their decisions either support or don't support the business organization goals. And so they don't understand what the goals are, what the top 3 priorities are that they have to achieve results. So one part is certainly figure out what your plan is and be able to communicate that business plan, and identify your top 3 priorities, and do that organization-wide and by department so that every person's clear on what their role is. Then what you'll have is customer service and sales speaking the same language, driving at the same principles, and there'll be consistency in the organization. Now that can be greatly supported with what we do off on the ERP CRM side, because when you've got complete access, and I can see what a customer's purchases have been, I know what their levels of inventory are, what their pattern of purchasing are, what the products are that they've been buying. It helps. If I can see that all of a sudden they've been purchasing $1 million of widget ABC and they no longer are, then boy, what's going on here? I've got the data to go follow up. And when I've got the mindset and the interdepartmental workflows going and sharing of information, we can greatly aid that support. So when your customer service people get on, they're being asked for a quote, very easy for them to start a workflow and engage sales in communicating with the customer, doing what sales does best, to go and identify what's the true business need and how can your organization satisfy it? And so we're the empowerment people as well. An hour's gone real quick, hasn't it, Tony?
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Absolutely. You know what? I feel like we just scratched the surface today.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we probably should talk about upcoming events. You know, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know. This is something new. I think it's a good way to get people to understand a little bit about what some of the issues are out there about sales and management. And maybe you want to talk about the series of events we've scheduled for the next few months. Oh, there they go. Right on track there. And what we're going to be doing, when we're going to be doing it.
Go ahead, Tony. Lead on.
So yeah, I think that on the 4th of May we're going to have an event called "Change the Rules and Close More Sales." You know, how is, you know, what you're doing now got to change to bring in more money and increase your sales. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The 25th of May we're going to talk about it's time to shift your focus. It's getting to the middle of the year, and from a goal setting perspective, at least from my perspective, we need to look at, you know, where are we, evaluate where we are in business and where we're going to go. June 15, what if you build them and they don't come? That's from an old movie that said, if you build it, they will come. Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. I don't know who remembers that movie. A lot of people in business, and especially in the technology business, believe that if they, you know, if they develop something and they come up with something new, that it's going to sell. And it's not as simple as that. You really need to know what you're doing, need structure. We're going to talk about that. September the 15th, we're going to talk about assessments, both yours and mine. Mine are simply behavioral assessments, profiling, type of people that we deal with and how we adapt our communication. 19th, we're talking about LinkedIn. How does that fit into your business? How do you use LinkedIn? How to use it for referrals, you know, what's posting, how to do a proper introduction, how to get a proper introduction, that kind of stuff. 16th of November, we're going to talk about algorithms, and algorithms are really systems and processes. Anybody who's got any technical background, whether you're a surgeon, an engineer, an architect, anybody that uses a very structured system, usually by education, we understand what an algorithm is, and in your business, I'm sure you have a lot of algorithms. In sales, you need to have an algorithm. That's the football analogy. Everybody uses this, you know, sales process, but everybody has to adapt it to their own team. And so I want to talk about, you know, how do you go from the algorithm to the heuristic? How do you internalize that algorithm? And at the end of the year, well, twofold topic. It's actually a play on words. One is about setting expectations when you're talking to people, when you're having a meeting, and the other one is setting expectation for the next year, because we're coming to the end of the year. So where are we going from here? Now, these are meant as educational events, but at the end of the day, we're all business people, and we're looking to identify people within the market that could benefit from our services, both yours and mine. And we're not asking, you know, for a whole bunch of meetings. We're asking for people who are interested in really exploring some of the issues they may be thinking about. And if we have a solution and a fit, and there is a fit, then we'll see where it goes from there. If there isn't, believe me, we'll tell them, at least I will tell them really fast, there's nothing we can do to help. Because we don't want to waste their time, we don't want to waste our time. I mean, time is money, right? That's what all this business is all about. So if anybody wants to have a conversation with us, I think they should send us an email, and maybe we'll have a one-on-one conversation. And if we can help, well, if we can't, hey, we can't.
Absolutely. Time's our most precious commodity, and it's fleeting so fast, so let's make good use of it. Yeah, we just get our pleasure out of helping people succeed and achieve their goals. And as we do that, the better we do it, we achieve our own. And that goes for both Tony and myself. So we throw up just reach out, phone numbers on there, email, give us a call, and tell us what your goals and your need are, and we'll sit down and have a chat.
Okay, it's okay with me.
Sounds good. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Stay tuned as well, and we'll send you email updates as we go forward. And tell your friends about us, and we'd love to come out and help you.